been reporting on financial matters for about 8.5 years, interviewing companies and economists about the South African economy. And when it comes to manufacturing, there's always two bugbears. One is the rand. Is it competitive enough? And the other thing is the level of domestic productivity. We'll speak to the guys on my right. We've got Coenraad here from the manufacturing circle. We've got Dr. Raymond Patel from MerSETA, and we've got Garth Strachan from the DTI. So I think what we'll do is we'll give each person roughly 5 minutes to give their perspective on the challenges in South African manufacturing.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks to Regenesys for the opportunity. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Given the 5 minutes I have, I've got 10 points to make. The first would be that there are very few, if any, examples anywhere at any time in history of a developing economy based on an increasing rate of return, of sustained economic growth above 7% for 10 years or more, which has not been led by the manufacturing sector. Number two, in South Africa's recent past, our growth has been characterized by unsustainable, credit-fueled, import-intensive growth. The financial and service sectors have grown at twice the rate of the productive sectors, and the economy has been characterized by extensive financialization, but only a very small percentage of investment is channeled towards the productive sectors of the economy. Number three, the primary productive sectors, mining and agriculture, have performed poorly. South Africa did not ride the global minerals commodity boom. Number four, the global economy is characterized by swathes of subsidies, incentives, tariff and non-tariff barriers, market failures, and state interventions and support for domestic private sector economic activity. The idea of a free global market is a massive myth. Number five, deregulation and liberalization of the economy in the post-1990 period has not brought about growth which orthodox economics or the Washington consensus theory and practice predicted. Number six, industrial policy and state-led support is strongly back on the agenda globally. The global financial crisis, which has led to the worst global economic recession since the Great Depression, perhaps with the exception of the Second World War, has thrown approximately 60 million people out of employment globally, and we are faced with a very, very serious global economic crisis. Since 2007, government's national industrial policy framework has been much maligned and criticized, but it has created platforms and new policy for support for the manufacturing sector. Number eight, these attacks on state-led support for the manufacturing sector have been very ill-informed. Number nine, we have created the basis through a range of instruments, industrial financing, public procurement, tariff and trade measures, and so on and so forth. Lastly, there are huge opportunities for manufacturing in South Africa if, with the right partnerships, we can make use of those opportunities in the infrastructure build, in the massive single market that is emerging, and the huge commodity boom in sub-Saharan Africa, the BRICS, and so on and so forth.
I think Garth has covered quite a bit of stuff there. And if mine would relate more to the human capital in order to get manufacturing. And so there would be some synergy in the things that Garth has said. Firstly, I think it is imperative that we start looking at South Africa or the manufacturing of South Africa in what I would call relational thinking. And what I mean with relational thinking is that you cannot look at the training of people, the human capital development, in isolation of the economic development of this country. If you go to any Southeast Asian country, it has a human resources development in its place. Korea, for now, has got a very strong human resources development for Korea. And that human resources development then determines its productivity output and its manufacturing. So for me, one is to have that firstly. Secondly, if we think of development, we have to think of human capital development firstly. So our own human capital development is not in place and possibly leads to the high unemployment that we see in this country. Third point that I want to raise is it's the whole education system. You know, I work in the tertiary education system, whether you see it as CETAs or FET or higher education. The problem lies not there. The problem lies in our fundamental education. Our basic education in this country is rotten. We need to fix that. We can't blame the kids, but I blame our education system. Our teachers are not competent in teaching, and we perpetuate this whole cycle. So our maths and science, you can go and look at it. Global competition, we don't perform very well. So we've got to look at what I simply call a synergized education and training system. From input right to output. From grade 1 or grade 0 right up to what we want at the tertiary level. Everybody should not be trained to go to university. We've got it wrong. We've got too many learners in university as it is. If we want to become a manufacturing country, we need to turn it around. For me, growth implies also poverty alleviation and rural development. Now, it's something we pay very much lip service to in this country, the whole rural development. We cannot take industry there. If one begins to really analyze, I think government has put policies in place, it's put structures in place where we can begin to address these issues. So what's important for me in training is to create decent work opportunities, and we then therefore need to revisit the following. Learner mobility, where do they come from and where they're going to? When we look at our kids, where they come from, the kind of communities, and where they're going to, as a serious issue. We don't track. We have a number of learners passing matric, but are they passing matric with the correct subjects? You know, you can pass matric with biblical studies, criminology, and all those ologies and so on, which neither makes us the most crime-free country nor the most holiest country in the world. But I think we need to look at where kids come into and where they're going to, and start tracking the mobility of learners. And I think if we begin to do that, we begin to get learners into the correct areas, and the area of manufacturing. The whole issue of access. Now, the reality of the matter is you cannot compare a child from Orange Village or Orange Farm to a child in Sandton. And that's where we begin to look at some other means. Because my child that lives in Sandton has got all the support that you need. The child in Orange Farm does not. And we must begin to look at those things. It's not dropping standards. It's making access possible. I think the whole issue of redress and skills development, you've heard it. You've heard about CETAs. I represent one of them. Garth would tell you I probably work for a better one that has a research department, one that understands what has to be done. But 13 years later, since the start of CETAs, are we proud? I don't think so. Could that money have been used different in the fiscus? Possibly. But should it be there? Yes, it should be. And the question is, how do we implement and use that fund to get South Africa different? There's a national growth plan, national development plan. And that plan, that 30-year-old plan, must begin to get the trajectory of this country right. And in doing so, we will look at the human development of this country for manufacturing. Thank you.
We at the Manufacturing Circle have emerged because there hasn't been for quite a long time, well, since forever, a generic voice representing manufacturing in the greater organized business fold in South Africa. And so you'll remember we like governing by acronym. And so when ASGISA emerged in 2006, there was a conversation amongst which were some manufacturers, and they realized that because they have not stood together generically as manufacturers, bankers, miners, retailers have a voice. They stand together, but the manufacturers don't. And so perhaps that's one of the reasons why until 2007, we've seen such a very rapid decline in the protection for manufacturers to the extent that it's given rise to an unlevel playing field. But I think, in short, the future of manufacturing in South Africa is necessary if we value the prosperity, the sustainability, and indeed the stability of South Africa. I think that's quite evident from the speeches that went before me. It is not a future of challenges only. It is also a future that can necessarily be bright. And there are specific reasons why I say that. It is so because manufacturing means skills transfer of the kind that help people help themselves, even when there are downturns, when the economy takes some knocks, when those who have learned trades can use them to create security for themselves, where the companies they work for has proven unable to do so. Manufacturing also could necessarily have a bright future because we manufacture quality in South Africa and we are easy to deal with. Advantages that have helped us overcome vast distances to enter advanced markets with top-class goods such as the best sports sedan in the world, which we manufacture here in South Africa, advanced electronics and arms componentry. It is also a future that promises to be bright because it endows us with the ability to dig our own resources out of the earth. We sell stuff that we manufacture to the mines to enable them to do that. And those resources to make them into added value goods before we export them. Goods such as metal components, aftermarket automotive components, rubber parts and plastics, pipes, tubings, chemicals. Those are all beneficiated goods that we can be globally competitive with, that we are so competitive with to a minor extent at the moment that we can grow our competitiveness in. But the chief challenge that it comes with, this bright future, is that we as South Africans need to say to one another that we agree that manufacturing is important. There's some of our policy documents that say so, and then there's some of them that does not say so. We need to be able to reach past the fault lines enforced by, which is quite a detrimentally politicized social dialogue system that is, according to me, by now also woefully past its sell-by date, that keeps pitting government, business, labor, and civil society against each other as opposing sides to the degree that the international community must in certain instances certainly sometimes perceive us as a nation at war rather than a nation at work. In other words, we must be able to unite behind single visions, not at the very highest level, but in our manufacturing categories. Confident that we will meet a government that will be willing to facilitate the minimization of negative domestic policy challenges, and a government that will bat decisively to secure a fighting chance on the global trade field for its manufacturers, even when you have to bat against China. Without this paradigm shift, the future of manufacturing in South Africa will continue to be every bit as necessary, but dimming by the minute, along with the success, happiness, and prosperity of its people.